Well, thank you all for being here. And again, this is a wonderful opportunity for us to share some of our resources, to network, and to find ways that we can be supportive of our audience, our clients, both our local church and the Anglican Church in North America, our diocese. What I would like to do is in this time and before Francis introduces the video greeting we have from Archbishop Foley Beach, is to share with you a little of the vision and mission, if you will, of the Anglican Legal Society. So let me just say a little something about us. And I'm going to rely on some notes that I have here and slides and invite you just to follow along. Why do we exist? Well, the Anglican Legal Society of the American Anglican Council exists to address legal challenges facing the Anglican Church in North America, that is the church, and its mission in today's culture, and to share ideas, resources, and best practices, and support and pray for each other. And that's all for the sake of the gospel. So this is why we exist. This is why this ministry of the American Anglican Council, this Anglican Legal Society, exists. Now, there are some facts about us I'd like you to know. Our network is open to non-lawyers. So we actually have clergy on this call. We have law students. We have bishops and canons to the ordinary and others who are interested in church law but are not necessarily licensed or practicing attorneys. And we welcome them all because what we're concerned about is good and godly governance. We do have a website, and you'll see up there, if you go to americananglican.org and then /Anglican Legal Society, you'll be able to come directly onto our webpage and see our mission statement, our logo for this particular ministry, and we will have some of the things that we do today posted on the website. Now, some fast facts. In 2019, I counted about 35 members. As of today, we have approximately 220. And that is anyone who's expressed an interest. You're part of the Anglican, American Anglican Legal Society. We had 8 participants last year in Chicago at our annual meeting in conjunction with the annual National Conference of the Christian Legal Society. Today, we have approximately 100 people who are signed up, and I'm not sure how many are actually watching at this moment, but that's quite a wonderful increase. And I think this bodes well for ways that we might want to consider meeting in the future. Let me say a little something too, that we have a steering committee, and I'll say by way of introduction, you will see some of these folks through the meeting today on your screens, and I'll just introduce them to you by name. Professor Samuel Bray is with the Anglican Diocese of the Living Word, and he is also a professor of law at the University of Notre Dame Law School. The Very Reverend Andrew Rowell is a regional dean in the Gulf Atlantic Diocese of the ACNA, and also serves on our governance task force. Mr. Richard Baker, formerly the Assistant Chancellor in the Diocese of Quincy, now in the Diocese of Pittsburgh, and a longtime friend of the American Anglican Council, both a trustee of the AAC and of the Christian Legal Society. The Reverend Stephen Savia is the Rector of Grace Anglican in New Bern, North Carolina, and in the Diocese of the Carolinas. The Reverend Mr. Chad Graham is both an attorney and a priest, as you heard from those of you in our breakout group. with ANIC. And so it's wonderful to be represented here today by the Anglican Network in Canada. And Ms. Rachel Thibault is an attorney. Not long ago, she passed the bar and was licensed in Texas, and she is our Deputy Communications Director for the Anglican Church in North America. So let's talk about how we should think of each other. And I'd like to say first that we should think of each other as stewards, this Anglican Legal Society, of the values and vision that shape the Constitution and canons of the Anglican Church in North America. And those values are biblical values. We are looking, when we look at canon law, at kind of a backdoor ecclesiology, what we actually believe. And many of the things that we end up addressing, like conflict, we go back to Scripture as some of the values that shape us, like Matthew 18 and our model canons on dealing with conflict or impairment in relationships. We're missional, and we need to constantly ask ourselves, are our canons fit for purpose? Do they in fact promote the mission of the Anglican Church in North America? This is an issue particularly with regards to an issue that's going to come up for those of you in dioceses and even in congregations with regards to overlapping dioceses, overlapping mission. Our values include that we are minimal. We want to state what we say in our canons, whatever is sufficient and necessary, and not go on and on. We're proud of the fact that the entire Constitution and canons of the Anglican Church in North America are less than the contents and directory of the canons for the Episcopal Church from whence we came. So that says a little something about us. And we'll be talking about alternative ways that we can see legislation other than through Constitution and canons. And then respect for subsidiarity. Where is the best locus for legislation? Is it in the province or the diocese? As such, the matters that we'll be addressing, discussing, and reporting will be relevant to the work of the ACNA Governance Task Force, sometimes to the College of Bishops and the Diocese of the ACNA, as we seek to keep the governance and polity of the ACNA good and godly and true to these values that shape it. So we're stewards, but we're also educators. We're educators in the law of the church. And so we think here of the Constitution and canons, provincial and diocesan, but also what we might call the quasi-legislation, issues that might be addressed with authority by the church other than through Constitution and canons. We are educators in the laws of the state. And those are the kind of corporate and nonprofit issues, as someone raised in our breakout session. What do you do in terms of getting 501c3 endorsement under the Internal Revenue Code for a whole diocese and all of its congregations? What about the laws of the state with regards to risk management, child abuse, zoning, freedom of speech? In our meetings together, we are educators. We share ideas. We share best practices. We share the questions that we're wrestling with, and hopefully the agenda of this meeting will be a good example of the kinds of serious discussions we want to have as co-educators and collaborators. In teaching academic courses like the course that many of you took online at Trinity School for Ministry, our steering committee is exploring next steps for having this not only for credit at Trinity, but also at seminaries like Gordon Conwell, Ridley Institute, and the Ryle College up in Canada. We're also exploring the possibility of finding a seminary and or a law school that would host an LLM, a Master in Law, for canon law, if enough people are interested in the introductory course. And then online, the presentations that we're going to have today in Title IV are going to be resources that we make available online through our website to chancellors, both in this meeting and those who couldn't attend. In publishing, one of the papers we'll be looking at today is proposal for a primer that would be on canon law for everybody in the church, vestry members, lay leaders, clergy. It coincides with an invitation I received from Anglican Compass to publish this, and so we'll be talking about this. There's the possibility of our publishing a journal, like the Ecclesiastical Law Society does, of academic papers. And so we're grateful to the work that Professor Samuel Bray has done in bringing these together. And perhaps there might be some interest in our developing a journal of the Anglican Legal Society that would, unlike the ecclesiastical law journal, focus not on Europe, but on what's going on in North America. We are also looking at, I've been looking at the possibility of publishing and writing and publishing a commentary on the Constitution and canons of the Anglican Church in North America. How many of you remember when you were in the Episcopal Church that venerable resource, White and Dykeman? We need an equivalent of White and Dykeman to make sure that we have proper interpretation and application of our canons. I've got thousands of emails and thousands of drafts in my files, but I would love to have some research assistance to help in pulling together this commentary so that we have this for the future of the Anglican Church in North America. We are stewards, we are educators, but we are also counselors at church law. And so the audience we serve are going to be the clergies and vestries of our local church, bishops in their capacities as guardians of the doctrine, discipline, and worship of the church. But really to any leaders, clergy or lay, who are involved with matters of governance in the local church, diocese, and province, and also to some degree, academic leaders and institutions sponsoring canon law courses. Many of us are going to be interested and involved in the drafting, interpretation, and application of church law at the parish, diocesan, and local level in the intersection of secular and church law. And here we think of things like the Religious Land Use Protection Act or the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, the intersection of our faith and religious liberty, secular law. But there are other intersections too. For instance, the intersection between secular laws requiring statutory laws requiring the reporting of child abuse and the clergy penitent privilege. As practitioners, we're going to increasingly face those issues and address them. And so tomorrow, I want to commend to you, as part of our meeting, in conjunction with the Christian Legal Society, that actually there is a very important workshop that the Christian Legal Society puts on every year, updating you on what the Supreme Court has done with religious liberty in the past year and what it is likely to face and some possible trajectories of it in 2021. We're in the midst of a heated debate on a new Supreme Court justice, and so I'm sure some of those issues will be addressed as well. That is tomorrow at 12 noon, and if you've registered for that, again, that's free. I hope you'll go. Ken Starr, the Honorable Ken Starr, will be moderating that, and you'll have practitioners from some of the major institutions and groups like the Alliance for the Defense of Freedom, the Beckett Fund, who are going to be addressing some of those important issues. And then finally, we are not only stewards and educators and counselors at church level, fellow disciples of Jesus Christ. I love Dallas Willard and his definition of what it means to be a disciple. And that is that you and I live our lives as Jesus would if he were in our shoes. It's a wonderful, direct, visual, compelling picture of what it means. And so as attorneys, as practitioners and stewards and educators and counselors at law, how would Jesus do what we are doing if he were in our shoes? That's what we aim at. And so these wonderful verses I commend to you as part of our fellowship and the longing that I think we heard sharing in our breakout groups today, that we would be an encouragement to each other, that we know that we're not alone, in the responsibilities and the burdens that we bear wherever we are, from Maine to the Rocky Mountains to California to Florida. We are a fellowship that can encourage and support each other and build one another up and stir up one another to love and good deeds, and not neglect to meet together regularly. We'll talk a little bit about the meeting piece in a minute. But on this good works piece, I'd like to commend something to you that I have heard from next generation leaders. And that is, if we think about what it means to practice church law as Jesus would, and think about what the Bible has to say about sojourners and aliens, about the people who have come to our own land here for reasons of asylum or economic possibilities and opportunities. And at least among many of our younger leaders, they are very sensitive to those who are seeking asylum, who have immigrated, and who want to legalize their presence here in the United States of America and in Canada. In places like Restoration Anglican, they are already doing that. And I'd like to just toss out as one possible challenge, following the good example of the Christian Legal Society, which offers Christian legal aid clinics pro bono. Is this something that we could take up ourselves in conjunction with the Matthew 25 provincial initiative, in conjunction with the Every Tribe and Nation network of the province, that we could lend our expertise and our resources to help in this important area of welcoming the alien and the sojourner into our midst. So just to wrap up, our next meeting in person will be at ACNA Provincial Council. I've given you those dates tentatively in June. They're the best dates I have now, but we will always meet as a group in person in conjunction with these provincial council meetings to discuss the changes that are being made in our constitution and canons, but also to talk about other matters as well. And next year, we'll be meeting again in conjunction with the Christian Legal Society, and perhaps we'll want to do this kind of a meeting again. We would welcome your comments. And so in the chat box, feel free to put your comments in at any time and questions as well. And we'll talk a little bit about that in just a minute.